The highway at night has a way of playing tricks on your mind. Shapes in the dark look like people. Every shadow feels like it's moving. And sometimes, you hear voices when no one is supposed to be there. I've been a trucker for nearly 20 years. I know what's real and what isn't. At least, I thought I did. Until the night I found that abandoned semi. And I realized that some drivers don't just disappear. Something takes them. I was about 10 miles outside of Great Falls, Montana, hauling a late-night delivery through a stretch of desolate highway. The road was empty. Not a single set of headlights behind me. No taillights ahead. Just my rig in the road. And then, through the static of my CB radio, I heard it. A voice. It was faint, garbled. At first, I thought it was just interference, someone speaking too far away to come through clearly. But then it repeated. A single word. Hello? I frowned, adjusting the dial. This is Rig 184. Who's calling? Nothing. Then, a click. Like someone had pressed their mic, but wasn't speaking. Then, softer this time. Help. A slow chill ran down my spine. The voice sounded wrong. Not frantic, not desperate, just distant. Like it wasn't really coming from the radio at all. I flipped through channels. Who's calling? You need assistance? Nothing. Then, I saw the truck. It appeared out of nowhere. A massive 18-wheeler, sitting in the middle of the highway. Not pulled over. Not on the shoulder. Dead center. Like it had been parked there on purpose. As I got closer, my headlights swept over it. The driver's side door was wide open, swinging slightly in the wind. Like someone had left in a hurry. I hit the brakes hard. My rig groaned as I slowed to a stop a few feet away. The abandoned truck loomed in front of me, completely still. No hazard lights. No movement. Just there. Waiting. I flicked on my high beams, and my stomach dropped. The inside of the cab was untouched. The driver's seat was pulled forward. A half-empty coffee cup sat in the holder. A jacket was draped over the back of the seat. And the radio? It was dangling off the dash. Still connected. Still hissing with static. I swallowed hard. Checked my mirrors. The road behind me was empty. Just me and this abandoned truck. I grabbed my CB mic again, my voice tighter now. This is Rig 184. I've got an abandoned semi blocking the road on Highway 200, near mile marker 86. No sign of the driver. Anyone else see this? Silence. Then, a click. Like someone had just unmuted their mic. But no one spoke. Just a long, empty hiss of static. I forced myself to breathe. Told myself it was probably a breakdown. Maybe the driver walked off to get help. But something felt wrong. I grabbed my flashlight, stepped out of my rig, and onto the road. The night was too quiet. No wind. No crickets. Just the sound of my own boots against the pavement. I took a few steps toward the open cab. Then, I saw the footprints. They led away from the truck. Deep indentations in the dirt, heading straight into the fields. But there was something off about them. They were incomplete. Each print faded partway through. Like whoever left them had started vanishing. I turned fast, scanning the road, the fields, the dark horizon. Nothing. No movement. Just my own uneasy breathing. I backed up toward my truck, gripping my flashlight too tight. Then, from inside the abandoned rig, the radio crackled. I froze. The radio shouldn't have been on. But through the static, a voice whispered, "Help." Soft, distant, like it was coming from somewhere else, somewhere far away. Then, silence. I turned and ran for my truck, jumped in, locked the doors, threw the rig into gear, and peeled out of there as fast as I could. Didn't look back. Didn't check the mirrors. Didn't breathe until I was miles down the road. I didn't stop until I reached a well-lit truck stop in the next town. And when I called it in, the cops didn't believe me. They said they'd send someone to check it out. But when they got there, the truck was gone. The only thing they found were 3 sets of tire tracks. One from the truck, 2 others, leading into the fields. Like someone else had been waiting out there. Waiting for the driver. Waiting for whoever stopped next. I don't stop for abandoned vehicles anymore. I don't answer voices on dead channels. Because now I know, not everyone who gets on the highway makes it to the other side. And some of them, they're still calling for help. Truckers learn early on Never stop for people on the side of the road. Doesn't matter if they look lost, hurt, or desperate. If they're out there, alone, in the middle of nowhere, they put themselves there for a reason. And sometimes they're not alone. I was hauling a load through a remote stretch of Idaho highway, cutting through dense forest on both sides. The road was silent. No streetlights, no signs, just endless trees stretching into the darkness. I hadn't seen another car for over an hour. My rig was the only thing on the road, headlights slicing through the pitch-black night. Then, I saw someone standing on the shoulder. At first, I thought it was just a road sign or a mile marker. But as I got closer, I realized it was a man, standing perfectly still, right at the edge of the trees. He wasn't moving, not turning toward me, not stepping back, just watching. A slow chill crawled up my spine. I flicked on my high beams, and for a split second, I saw him clearly. Tall, thin, wearing dark clothes. His eyes caught the light, and they glowed like an animal's. Then, as I passed, he disappeared, not stepped back into the woods, not turned away, vanished, like he had never been there at all. I gritted my teeth, refusing to check my mirrors. I kept driving, hands tight on the wheel. Then, I saw her, a woman, standing in the middle of my lane, a few hundred yards ahead. She was wearing a red sweatshirt and ripped jeans. Her head was tilted slightly to the side. Her arms hung limply at her sides. And just like the man, she wasn't waving for help, wasn't moving, just standing there, waiting. I honked. She didn't react. I flashed my high beams. Still, she didn't move. At the last second, I swerved into the other lane, my tires skidding on the pavement. As I passed, my headlights swept over her face. She was smiling, a thin, stretched-out grin, and her eyes, they weren't looking at me. They were looking past me, at something behind my truck. A wave of pure dread slammed into me. I checked my mirrors. Nothing, just the long, empty highway. But I could feel it, that awful, sinking feeling that I wasn't alone anymore, that something had climbed into my truck. I pressed the gas pedal harder. The forest blurred past. I just needed to get to civilization, a gas station, a rest stop, anything. Then, I saw the body. It was lying in the road, just ahead, face down, motionless, like they had just collapsed there. A fresh wave of panic surged through me. If I stopped, I'd be completely alone in the dark. If I kept driving, I might be running someone over. I clenched my jaw, my grip white-knuckle tight. Every instinct screamed at me, "Don't stop." I swerved into the opposite lane. The second I did, the body sat up, not slowly, not like someone waking up. It jerked upright in an instant, like a puppet on strings. And in my side mirror, as I sped past, I saw its head turn to watch me. I didn't slow down, didn't look back. I just kept driving. And in my mirrors, I saw them, more people, standing in the trees, dozens of them, lined up along the road, silent, still, all facing my truck, watching me leave. I drove for nearly an hour before I reached a truck stop, pulled in under the brightest lights I could find. My hands were shaking. I sat there, breathing hard, my heart still hammering in my chest. I didn't know what I had just seen, didn't know who those people were, but I knew one thing for sure. It was a trap. The man standing in the trees, the woman in the road, the body lying in my path. They wanted me to stop. They wanted me to get out of my truck. And if I had, I don't think I would have made it back. I don't drive through that part of Idaho anymore. I don't stop for people on the side of the road. And I don't trust bodies lying in the dark. Because now I know, some things don't want to ride. They want you to get out. And if you do, you won't be seen again. There are rules you follow as a trucker. Always keep your doors locked. Always keep your fuel topped off. Never pick up hitchhikers. But the most important rule? If something doesn't feel right, leave. That rule saved my life. It was a cold February night, and I was on my last long stretch of highway before I planned to pull into a real truck stop to get some rest. The road was empty, stretching out like a black river through the frozen plains of Nebraska. No lights, no cars, no towns for miles. I had been driving for nearly 14 hours straight, and the exhaustion was hitting me hard. Then, up ahead, I saw a small dirt lot off the highway. Not ideal, but I was too tired to care. I pulled over, and that's when I made my mistake. I killed the engine, adjusted my seat, and let out a long sigh. The silence outside was too thick. No wind, no sound at all, just the occasional creak of my truck cooling off. I locked my doors, tilted my seat back, and let my eyes drift shut. Then, I heard footsteps. At first, I thought I was dreaming, but then, a slow, deliberate crunch of gravel. Closer now. Someone was walking toward my truck. I froze, didn't move, didn't even breathe. I cracked one eye open and reached for my flashlight, but I didn't turn it on, didn't reach for my CB. I just listened. The footsteps stopped, right outside my cab door. Then, a voice. Hey. My stomach dropped. It wasn't loud, wasn't panicked. It was just a soft, casual greeting, like a neighbor saying hello, like it was normal for a stranger to be standing in the dark, whispering at my window in the middle of the night. And then, the door handle moved. I lunged forward and hit the lock button again, even though I knew I had already locked it. The handle jiggled once, then again, then, slowly, a third time, like he was testing it, like he was making sure it was locked. Then, silence. I sat there, barely breathing. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then, the footsteps started again, moving away, slow, unhurried, like he was giving up, like he had all the time in the world. I waited until the footsteps faded into nothing. Then, as quietly as I could, I reached for my keys. But before I could start the engine, something slammed against my passenger side window. I nearly jumped out of my skin. A face, too close, pressed against the glass. A wide grin stretching across pale, weathered skin. Eyes too dark to see in the dim light. Just a grinning mouth. And as I scrambled for the keys, his hand lifted, and he waved. I threw the truck into gear. The tires screamed against the gravel as I sped onto the highway. Didn't look back. Didn't check the mirrors. Didn't even breathe until I was miles away. Only then did I check my mirrors. The road behind me was empty. No cars. No headlights. Like he had never been there at all. I didn't stop until I reached a well-lit truck stop an hour later. Pulled into a spot right under the floodlights. I sat there, gripping the wheel, trying to slow my breathing. And that's when I noticed it. My passenger side window was cracked. A hairline fracture, running from the center outward, like it had been hit with something sharp, or something strong. And on the glass, a perfect, greasy handprint. The next morning, I told a few truckers about it over coffee. One of them, an older guy with tired eyes, gave me a slow nod. "You were lucky," he said. "Lucky?" I asked. "Lucky he didn't break the glass?" The old trucker shook his head. "No. Lucky you didn't open the door. I don't stop in isolated places anymore. I don't pull over in dirt lots. And I sure as hell don't ignore my gut. Because I don't know what that man wanted. I don't know how long he had been standing there before he spoke. But I do know one thing. If my doors hadn't been locked, if I had taken even a second longer to react, he would have gotten in,